Today, for the first time, we will draw a simple geometric shape using hatching. To begin with, we will make a sketch of the ball and find it in the space of the sheet. To do this, I will just hover a circle several times at the center of the sheet. Of course, using this approach, it's possible that you will immediately get a perfectly smooth ball. But, in any case, we will use a special scheme to align it and bring it to perfection. As soon as the sketch is ready, the height and width of the object should already be determined here. We proceed to the construction. To do this, we will need to find two axes, horizontal and vertical, which will divide the object into exactly two parts. To make sure that the lines are straight, check the parallelism of the axis with the edge of the sheet as I do. If the line is not completely smooth, then the ball will turn out to be curved in total. I also remind you that all lines should be light. Now I find the center at the intersection of the two axes. I am putting an end to it. And now I am measuring the segments. Take the distance of one of the sides to the center point and measure. Then, having a ready segment, I am checking whether it corresponds to the opposite side. If the width of the segments does not match, you need to make them the same. Our task is to make all four segments of the roundness of the ball exactly the same. I personally almost guessed all the sides, and I have everything right. Then I connect all the points with straight lines and form something like a rhombus. Make sure that the line falls clearly at the center of the point. Otherwise, you can make incorrect measurements and uneven rounding of the ball. This is what the basic scheme looks like. Now I am finding the center at each side of the rhombus. Here we don't do anything by side. Everything should be perfectly measured. Now we need to make sure that this opening and these lengths of the segment are the same on the other sides. To do this, we will measure the width of the segment and transfer it to others to make sure. If some segments do not match, you first correct the wrong segment and then align the circumference of the ball on this side. If you have everything aligned and everything is correct everywhere, you can erase all the construction lines. I also draw your attention to the fact that the silhouette of the ball must have one correct line. There should be no layering of the line on the line. After all the adjustment, you can outline the horizon line. it will be just above the center of the ball. In parallel, we will outline the ball's on and falling shadows. Here, I am focusing only on the subject. I will not study its environment in detail. You can clearly shade the entire drawing if you have the desire. We outline all the contours of the shadows as in the photo and do not invent anything. We depict them with light lines. It will not be superfluous to also outline a reflex. This entire part will be halftone. And here there will be a glare. Then we lighten all the lines before moving on the tone. Now I am going to start hatching the sphere with the HB pencil. We have two options for shading. The first option is when we stroke in a circle, creating a rotation. The second option is more complicated. Here, we round off the stroke in shape, but we are already using this direction. Opinions are very often divided as to how it's still better to stroke. And I will tell you that both options are correct. The most important thing here is to follow the rules and do everything carefully. Usually, on such a simple subject as a sphere, many institutions test your knowledge for technique. Today, we will do the work using the first option, a more simplified one. And later, using the second variation of this stroke direction, we will draw a live apple. To begin with, we will apply the first layer according to the shape of the shadow. As you can see, I do not round the stroke, but divide it into many parts, and each time I gradually change the direction. The speed of drawing I will have at the beginning may be faster than yours, so if necessary, stop the video. Now I will go through the second layer only in the shadow of the ball. At this time, I am slightly changing the direction of the stroke. For the first few layers, we always use harder pencils. I am using HB. If you immediately take a soft pencil and start applying dark lines, it will be a gross mistake. All this will make your drawing rough and sloppy. I remind you that at the very bottom, where we have a fairly bright reflex, I do not stroke. So, at the moment, I will switch to the falling shadow of the ball and lay it in the direction of the table. Remember that we always adapt the stroke direction to the shape. Before doing this, analyze your subject to choose the most profitable and emphasizing direction. When working with the background, you can always experiment more, since it's the air and the environment of the object that have no shape. All these rules serve us to achieve great results. It's not a rule for the sake of a rule. This is what will lead you to a large drawing. Now I will take a pencil 2B and start dipping the shadows of the ball. When we reach the necessary saturation of all shadows, we will be able to switch to semitones and light, but not before. Everything we learn on the course is aimed at giving you the structure and understanding of drawing. After all, understanding these basic approaches, you can easily and simply portray any ideas on the sheet. Let's go back to our drawing. Every time I change the direction of the stroke when I deepen the shadows. The direction should change very gradually and visually even remain the same. Otherwise, we will not be able to emphasize the shape of the sphere. If one stroke was like this, then the next one would be like this. As you can see, the difference is minimal and almost imperceptible, but it's what we have. We should change the angle by 1 or 2 degrees. If you change it this way, it will be wrong. Using such a roof overlay, you will create a grid effect that will not be justified in any way on a plaster white ball. Here, both the line and the shape and the spot should indicate what kind of figure it is. They should not be in discord with each other. Therefore, through the shape in the direction of the stroke and through the spot where we have placed the shadows, we tell a story about the subject. That's why these 3 important components must be in harmony to emphasize the subject. In fact, if you do not have one of these 3 elements, then there will be no volume in the work either. Therefore, if you doubt your work, check your drawing for these 3 components. Now I will darken the reflex on the right a little. Do not forget to use our kneaded eraser to correct or lighten the pattern if necessary. I redarken the shadow on the ball. Remember that we are constantly changing the stroke angle. I adapt its direction based on the place where I want to apply it. Now we are quite ready to switch to semitones. Let's do a tone analysis of the photo now. The darkest place on the ball is here. Next, we have reflexes. It will be lighter at the bottom again. Then the semitones are here. In this case, the reflex from below is lighter than the semitones. We note this to ourselves. That's why I've been there once and several times on the right. You can also pay attention to the fact that the ball is darker along the contour on the right than at the bottom. We compare the lower bright reflex with what is somewhat on the top and right. We already know the answer. We need to darken the upper part more. And now, this difference is well seen. Make sure that you have the same. Next, with the same pencil 2B, I am darkening the falling shadow this time. We can observe that it's darker than the ball. So, therefore, we build this tonality. I start to stroke it under the subject as this is the darkest part. Here, I will take even 4B for more dimming. You will not be able to perform a full-fledged tone drawing using a single softness of a pencil. This is impossible because there must be its own softness for each action. At the moment, I am satisfied with the contrasts from this side of the falling shadow. Remember that reflexes should be lighter compared to the shadow of the sphere. In this case, the ability to compare one place with other and see where things need to be corrected makes us artists. This is what we strive for. If you manage to see such things even at the initial stage, then your eye is already more developed. If not, don't despair. Such things come with experience, with practice, and increased awareness. To do this, ask yourself constantly, why I'm doing this and not otherwise? Why is this place lighter and this one darker? Is this really the case? And etc. In this way, we will develop in ourselves the contemplation and awareness. Blind following someone will not bring the desired results. Then I will light up the reflex from below a little. You can also do it if it's necessary in your drawing. Then we move on to the full-fledged work with semitones. To do this, we will take a harder pencil, H or HB. We will also lay semitones on the left side of the ball. We put strokes in the shape, rounding them off. Even now, you can see how the ball is becoming more and more realistic. I remind you that this whole area around the shadows is a zone of semitones. We make them in several layers with the hard pencils. And don't forget to rub your strokes each time to adapt them to the shape. I remind you that we do not apply such lines to our work. This is a huge mistake. You can go in this direction with the help of a crushed stroke, when we change the angle a little bit. I'm gradually approaching the light through a very light stroke. And, as always, if you see that you have darkened, take a kneaded eraser and lighten it. The closer you get to the light, the less pressure you put on the pencil and the lighter your lines will be again. You should come to a complete dissolution of light strokes in the whiteness of the sheet, as we did in the exercises on tonality and transitions. Remember that if there are no smooth transitions, then there is no volumetric perception of the drawing. Everything seems more decorative and, as a result, less realistic. As the famous artist Pablo Picasso said, only a professional artist can break the rules. And now, having filled in the semitones and partially the light, I see that the ball's own shadow, as well as its following one, is relatively light and needs to be darkened. So, I will take a 4B pencil and deepen the shadows. In the case of a falling shadow, it will be better to leave it as dark as possible under the ball and then dissolve it in the background. I am going to work out the background on the left side of the ball. In this case, the direction no longer matters much, but nevertheless, I personally choose to move in a circle to emphasize the shape of the sphere. Here again, I don't stroke the entire background. I will fill in only the left part on the background to highlight the light on the ball. You can do as you want, but remember that in this case the background on the right will be, on the contrary, lighter than the ball. And, as you probably noticed, we will deal with the background at the very end. You can align the contour of the ball with it if necessary. Now, at the finishing stage of the work, check that all tone transitions are smooth. Even in places where it seems that shadow and light contrast very strongly. Even then, there is a small bridge of semitones that unites them. Review it so that it's in your work. And we can stop here with you.